In the summer of 1941, deep in the roar of tanks and thunder of war, a little-known German officer made his mark. His name was Walter Model, though he had served since World War I. It was Operation Barbarossa, the brutal invasion of the Soviet Union, that brought him into the spotlight. Leading the 3rd Panzer Division under Guderian's 2nd Panzer Army, Model struck fast and hard. His troops stormed across Soviet lands, reaching the Great Dnieper River. On July 10th, with cold precision, he launched a daring 3-pronged attack. Infantry seized the bridgehead, artillery rained fire, and tanks rolled in right behind. It worked. The river was crossed, the Soviets pushed back, and Model, once a shadow, now stood in full light. The Iron Cross was pinned to his chest. Germany had found a new warrior, one who didn't chase glory, but earned it through steel, speed, and grit. This was only the beginning. Winter crept over Russia like a silent assassin, freezing the mud, snapping steel, choking every breath. And in that breathless silence, a man emerged with fire in his chest. Walter Model. It was October 1941. He had just been promoted and sent to Kalinin, barely 160 kilometers from Moscow. What greeted him was hell. Starving soldiers in rags, covered in lice, gripping shattered rifles with frostbitten hands. Most commanders would have hidden behind reports and radios. Not Model. He stormed past red tape, marched straight to the front, and stood shoulder to shoulder with his men. No more orders from behind desks, he declared. By December, his forces had clawed their way to Lanka, just 35 kilometers from the Kremlin's spires. Then the Red Army struck, stronger, better supplied. Relentless, his lines cracked, snow turned crimson. And still they held. Model watched, listened, learned. The Soviets came in waves, but their supply lines always lagged. That was the weakness. So he reshaped his defenses, layered, flexible, deadly. When the Soviets broke through, they weren't free, they were trapped. Waiting tanks, hidden guns, instant slaughter. Over and over, the trap snapped shut. In the frozen outskirts of Moscow, Walter Model didn't just survive. He rewrote the rules of resistance. And from that moment on, the Eastern Front had found its fiercest defender. After Moscow, Model wasn't just a commander. He was a force of nature. Sent to lead the 9th Army, he didn't follow old rules. He made his own. While others clung to tired doctrines, Model saw war as a living thing, fast, brutal, and always changing. He demanded real-time intelligence from scouts. No waiting, no guesswork. I don't want maps, he said. I want eyes. His front lines weren't static walls. They were flexible webs, thin in places, strong in others, constantly adapting to the enemy's moves. Model scattered his tank units across the front. No massive armored block, just fast, mobile groups ready to strike wherever pressure came. Artillery? He massed it in key zones, blasting enemy assaults before they could gain momentum. Then came his boldest move, layered defenses, wall behind wall, line behind line. Hitler hated it. Soldiers will fall back too easily, he warned. Model stared him down. Who commands the 9th Army, you or me? And he built them anyway. For 2 years, those walls held. While other generals lost ground, Model stood firm. His army not only survived but sent help to others. In a war of collapse, he became Germany's immovable rock-cold, calculating, unbreakable. At Rzeów, Model faced his biggest test. Soviet forces threw everything they had at him: men, tanks, artillery. Operation Mars, led by Zhukov himself, aimed to break his line. But Model held. He crushed the assault and bled the Red Army dry. The cost was staggering. Thousands died in frozen mud. But Berlin was thrilled. They called him the Lion of Defense. Hitler praised him as the savior of the Eastern Front. His fame spread like wildfire through the ranks. Yet behind that fame, something darker stirred. As the Soviets regrouped, Model prepared to withdraw. But he didn't just leave. He scorched the earth, burned villages, destroyed bridges, and gave a chilling order: no shelter for the enemy. Worse still, he unleashed fury on civilians. Suspected partisans were rounded up. Over 3,000 people, men, women, children, were executed under his command. Rzeów wasn't just a battlefield. It became a graveyard. Despite the brutality, Berlin rewarded him again. The retreat was seen as efficient, his lines intact. He received the swords to his oak leaves, another notch on his iron cross. No questions asked. From here on, Model's legend was a double-edged sword. To the German High Command, he was a genius. To those under occupation, he was a monster in uniform. And as the war dragged on, that shadow only grew darker. July 1943, Model returned to the front, this time to lead the main German force in the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history. He believed speed and shock could break the Soviet lines. One more push, he thought, might turn the tide. But the Soviets were ready. They had built miles of trenches, planted thousands of mines, and dug in deep. Model's tanks roared forward and slammed into steel walls. Every step forward came with fire, mud, and blood. His blitzkrieg stalled. Soviet defenses held firm. Then came the counterattack. On July 12th, 3 Soviet fronts struck back: Bryansk, Central, and Western. They didn't just stop the Germans, they started pushing them back. The battle raged for 3 weeks. German losses mounted. Tanks burned, soldiers fell, and supplies vanished. Model watched as his careful plan unraveled in smoke and ruin. Kursk was lost, and with it, Germany's final chance to regain the East. Model wasn't blamed, but something changed. For the first time, his reputation was bruised. No longer untouchable, he was granted leave. He spent Christmas with his family in Dresden. But the war wouldn't rest, and neither would he. Kursk marked the turning point. From then on, the Red Army was on the rise and Germany was falling fast. Even the Lion of Defense could feel it. The winds of war had shifted, and now they were blowing hard against Berlin. Kursk marked the turning point. From then on, the Red Army was on the rise, and Germany was falling fast. Even the Lion of Defense could feel it. The winds of war had shifted, and now they were blowing hard against Berlin. At first, he held. His layered defenses blunted Soviet attacks, but it didn't last. On June 28th, the Soviets unleashed Operation Bagration, a massive coordinated assault aimed at destroying Army Group Center. It worked. German troops were encircled. Minsk was falling. Model scrambled to rescue what he could. He ordered breakouts, begged for reinforcements, but the front was collapsing faster than he could move. Entire armies vanished. Soviet tanks poured west. For the first time, Model wasn't slowing them, he was chasing shadows. Then came another blow, the Lvov-Sandomierz offensive. Germany's grip on Eastern Europe was breaking. Still, Model adapted. He noted Soviet supply lines were stretched. While they paused to resupply, he struck hard, not against soldiers, but partisans. In Warsaw and across Poland, his troops burned villages, crushed resistance, and left scorched earth behind. It bought him time, but at a terrible price. Civilians paid in blood for every day Model gained. His tactics had shifted. He was no longer just defending Germany, he was drowning its enemies in terror and fire. He inherited chaos. Allied forces had broken out of Normandy. German lines were in ruins. Model quickly called for a retreat to preserve what was left. Shockingly, Hitler agreed. But the cost was steep. Paris was lost. Thousands of troops and machines left behind. For once, Model couldn't stop the bleeding. His only goal now, delay the Allies, hold Germany's border, and buy time. He regrouped broken units and rebuilt defenses along the Siegfried Line. It was no longer about victory, it was survival. But fate wasn't done testing him. In September, the British launched Operation Market Garden and gave him a chance to strike. Model didn't hesitate. He crushed the Allied airborne assault at Arnhem, wiping out the British 1st Airborne Division. It was a rare victory. The Rhine remained in German hands, and the Lion of Defense roared once more. But it was only a pause. The Allies kept coming. Model braced for the next wave. He knew what was coming. He'd seen it before on the Eastern Front, and now it was heading straight for Germany's heart. December 1944. In a final gamble, Hitler launched the Ardennes Offensive, Germany's last major push. Walter Model was at the center of it. His orders: break the Allied lines, split their armies, and take back the initiative. At first, it worked. Caught off guard, American units fell back. Snowstorms grounded Allied planes. German tanks rolled through the forest. Model smelled something he hadn't felt in months: momentum. But fuel ran low, roads clogged, the Allies regrouped fast. Once the skies cleared, Allied bombers returned with fury. What started as a surprise turned into a bloodbath. The breakthrough collapsed. The offensive failed. Model didn't quit. He launched local counterattacks in Hürtgen Forest and around Aachen, inflicting brutal losses on American forces. But each success came at a higher price. Men were dying, ammo was scarce, and reinforcements weren't coming. One officer complained, "We don't have enough supplies." Model snapped, "Then take them from the Americans." It wasn't sarcasm, it was desperation. He was fighting ghosts with shadows, and he knew it. By early 1945, the Ardennes dream was dead. Germany was bleeding out. The Allies closed in from the west, the Soviets from the east. Model's brilliance delayed the inevitable, but even he couldn't stop what was coming. Spring 1945. Germany was collapsing. Soviet armies thundered in from the east. The Allies stormed from the west. Walter Model, once the Lion of Defense, now stood surrounded in the Ruhr pocket, with no supplies, no hope, and no orders that could change fate. He knew it was over. Communication broke. His men starved. One by one, German units surrendered. Model released his soldiers from duty, telling them to escape or give themselves up. But he made no such plan for himself. On April 17, 1945, he spoke quietly to his chief of staff. "Have we done enough to justify ourselves to history?" Then he walked into a forest and shot himself in the head. He was 54. He refused to face capture, especially not by the Soviets. Model had led 3 army groups, fought on both fronts, and delayed defeat time after time. But he had also ordered scorched-earth retreats, anti-partisan massacres, and civilian executions. His genius was shadowed by cruelty. In 1955, his son Hans-Georg found his grave and moved his remains to the Vosnak military cemetery. Hans, too, had once worn a German uniform in the war's final days, carrying the weight of a father who never surrendered and never could. Walter Model died with a pistol in his hand, a war at his back, and a legacy divided between battlefield brilliance and bloodstained silence.